Hi guys, my name is Addison Miller, and today I'm going to be talking about Chapter 15 about video games. So first, let's start off on the first slide. Let's talk about some of the history of it. In 1970, early homemade computer games were invented. In 1975, the birth of a video game, arcades. In 1990 to today, cell phone games were invented and portable platforms as console extensions. And then 2005 to today are um, hands-free motion controllers, which I will talk about that in a little bit. Let's go on to the next slide. The early years of video games. So, um, the very first video game on a standard TV set was called The Chase. And then in 1972, the Odyssey was created, and the first video game with analog components such as dice games, money, and plastic. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, and then we move on to the second generation of games. And then that's when in 1977 the Atari was created. It was the first ever game built on a microprocessor called Pong, which Pong was a super old school game. I'm pretty sure a lot of you play it. It's got the two sticks that go up and down, and that was the first one that they used with the joysticks. And then, along with the Atari, um, a new era of video games with popular movie titles that were in it, such as E.T. Extraterrestrial and Indiana Jones: The Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then that's what sparked the popular adaptations of arcade games such as Pac-Man, Defender, and Centipede. Next slide. And then also, the Atari 2600 led the market for home video game sales. Atari was later bought by the Warner Communications from 1977 to 1982, and 4 billion products were sold. Next slide. Early Nintendo systems. After a downturn of Atari sales in 1981, there was a company called Nintendo that came up with their own system called the Sega Master System in 1981. In 1977, the NES, which is known as the Nintendo Entertainment System, was the best-selling toy in the United States. Game characters include Donkey Kong and the popular franchise character Mario and his brother Luigi. Then we move on to the different types of computer games. Computer games came around about the 1850s, along the same time as video games. And computer games that were processed were on the Apple II, the Commodore PET, and the Atari 800. Um, there was another type of processing thing called the Computer 64 that added a color system for games on their Macintosh without joysticks, which hence the mouse. Then we move on to portable game systems. The portable game systems are the top of the consumer marketplace in the early 1980s, around the same time as computer games. They had very rudimentary graphics, which means they weren't the best, but they were still a work in progress. Everyone loved them. And then Atari had the Lynx handheld system in 1987. And then my favorite, in 1989, Nintendo releases the Game Boy Color that mimicked the NES systems. It had low costs and stable, well-known titles, black and white graphics. In all honesty, the Game Boy Color was my first ever um, handheld system that I completely loved. Uh, it had certain games like Pokemon and Super Mario Brothers, and even some Donkey Kong games that came around in the Game Boy Color. The graphics weren't the best, but they were pretty good for back in the ages. Next system. The portable games continued. Um, uh, the popular system with Nintendo had a large number of titles, or audiences were already familiar with the system. By around that time is when Nintendo became the fourth Sega out in the mid 1900s, and another consumer product came into play called Sony. Now let's move into PlayStation. PlayStation, also known as Sony, launched in 1955, and it plugged right into the video game market. Sony and the Nintendo company were always neck and neck, but Nintendo had more family-friendly games. Sony had what they called controversies in their starter games. For those of you who don't know, I have it here. Controversies were hidden or add-on content like hot coffee for Grand Theft Auto, which is open sexually and violent content. which that I feel like has been an upgrade nowadays because um, there's a lot of games that add that now in today's society. Like even like the GTA games nowadays, even though I don't do it, but I heard a lot of people just like to go around and just shoot people on the streets and go to strip clubs and stuff like that, which they pleasure themselves, which I personally do not care for. Plus, the new generation of video games. The next slide. In 2001, Sega admitted defeat in hardware and focused more on the software, which then turned into Xbox that was created at Microsoft by 2001. And then I personally owned the Xbox 360, which is the next one, but a lot of people back then had the original Xbox, which is a step down. Um, it had a lot better graphics than a lot of the Sony PlayStation games, and even with the old system for Nintendo. Also around 2001, Sony launched the PlayStation Portable to complete with Nintendo's Game Boy Color. Uh, the PSP that people included also added the online marketplace and some downloadable content, which allowed people to buy other content um, online through a store that allows them to get like more guns or a better suit. Next slide. Online video gameplay. Um, uh, there's been a lot of talk about high-speed internet on throughout the day to day. And the first online game was launched in 2004 with World of Warcraft, which is a role-playing game that lets you fight monsters through story gameplay. Uh, technically, back then I wasn't really the best at online computer games. I mostly stuck with like the uh, Game Boy and the Nintendo, playing Pokemon and even some games called Super Smash Brothers, which I'll probably get into that a little later. Um, with the popularity, online play is spread to many genres today, such as sports games, um, games from the military, and some sci-fi games. Some examples of that is Madden. Madden's a big one. Madden, hockey, FIFA, and some games from the military would be like Battlefield, um, Call of Duty's another big one, and then sci-fi fantasy games like Halo has the Xbox, or Halo is on the Xbox, and it's like a space game of like going in space and fighting monsters. Um, that's a huge thing of online gameplay nowadays. Online play from computers spread to portable game systems, and then uh, just like the Nintendo DS, where certain games can be played online with others who have the system, kind of the same as the PSP that I mentioned earlier. Um, People can play online with other people that have the same games and the same device. Game systems today. In 2006, Nintendo released the popular Wii that most games are now played with using remotes to control your players. Um, I actually had the Wii when I first started, and I absolutely loved it. The classic Wii bowling is a great way to, I guess, help yourself get active. But now it is more introduced in society to senior citizens to help them stay active. And uh, there's a lot of people saying that the Wii has inferior graphics, but um, um, but the Nintendo Wii is for people who have never played a video game before and are just testing out, like kids and even senior adults, as I just said, in retirement homes. Next is, let's move on. Game systems today. In recent years, Xbox and Microsoft have battled head to head with the popularity of their system, the PS4 versus Xbox One. Um, uh, they both today have what they call game exclusives, where they can buy certain game packages for their system only. Like, for an example, if those of you have a PS4 or are big gamers nowadays, there was a most recent PlayStation exclusive that came out, which is Spider-Man. Um, I have a PS4, so I've played all through Spider-Man and I beat it, and it was a lot of fun. And then, and for those of you that have Xbox, have Halo. Halo is a exclusive only for that system. It's the best game ever, even though I'm not, even though I'm not the best at it. And then while Sony and the Xbox company are going head to head, the the Nintendo company still makes great games that is fun for the whole family and includes fun characters that all interact with each other because they all share the rights, like Mario and Sonic and all that. But there's a lot of games that are play with all of them nowadays, which is like Super Smash Brothers, as I talked about earlier, which is a super fun, popular fighting game that has evolved and now has 4 different versions: the original, Melee, Brawl, the Wii U version, and then there's a new one that just came out. So really, that's 5. Um, so that's really how popular the Smash Bros. Game has gotten. And then also you have games like Super Mario Kart, where you can choose your characters like Sonic or Mario or Donkey Kong, or even characters like Kirby in some instances, or Bowser Jr., where you can like have them jump on a race car and go and get items and throw them at each other. That game is super fun, but it also ruins a lot of friendships. Some other major features about other major features about consoles today. All or most game systems have a place to download other games or content on their top of their game on top of their game. So as I said earlier, the the Xbox has their marketplace where you can get like add-ons and um, just a lot of special content. And then on the PlayStation, you can get the PlayStation Plus, which allows you to get like certain games and exclusives and free to play games online. And then with Nintendo, it's got a great quality of like of online capabilities, like for not only buying like add-ons to games and other games, but also they have it's kind of like an avatar creator. It's called a Create Your Own Me, and because what you can do with that is you can get interactive and like have like a standard face and like create the facial features to make it look just like you, and then you can have it like go into like gameplay with like Wii bowling or Wii tennis, and then like choose your character and get them better to have the skill set that you want, which is really cool. And then also going back to the PlayStation and the Xbox, on the PS4 and the Xbox One are right now battling head to head every Christmas to see who has the better deals. But but both Xbox and PlayStation have a good enough processor where users can watch movies and on uh, where users can watch movies on DVD and Blu-ray, which I think is a great add-on for them. Which sadly the company Nintendo does not have the capability, which I'm hoping soon enough they will. And also, uh, there's one major feature that almost all products have nowadays is where you can get like certain applications to watch your favorite shows or like stream TV if you don't have cable, um, which I think is a spectacular idea. If you want to save money and you have a PlayStation, you can get what is called the PlayStation View, or or they have certain applications for that, like to watch other TV shows and movies like Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime. If you have that, it's a pretty great concept. Next one, the last slide is social gaming, and that has more to do with like the like playing games on your phone, which some games can be a social play where you can play with a lot of people on your Facebook page. Some examples include Farmville, Candy Crush, Criminal Case, and Words with Friends, which those allow players to have certain moves, and then send your moves to the other person to have them play in like a certain amount of time, and then also like for games with uh just like Words with Friends, share your results of like, oh, so and so beat your best friend or your grandma or something like that, and prove to you that you're the better player if you want to do it that way. And then and then some social games are also like strategy games, like Clash of Clans and some other games like that, where you can like have like a strategy and uh, to build your base and send people out and fight base against base. So in conclusion, I personally love the chapter of video games because I have a huge passion for it. It's been with me through the most of my life, and yeah, that's basically. And then last but not least is some questions for you guys. The first question is: Do you think the era of video games are ever going to die out? Why or why not? And then second question: for those of you that have seen the movie Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg, do you think video games will ever be that advanced later in society? Uh, Also, I just want to mention that for those of you who not seen Ready Player One, it's kind of like a more advanced uh, type of video game where it's got like the goggles and the vests and the free roam treadmill, um, as well as online play. So, um, so do you think that video games will ever be advanced later in society, like the use in Ready Player One? I look forward to hearing you guys the rest of the semester. Enjoy.